Hi, thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Between Bells, Camden Catholic's podcast that explores the people that make up our school community and what they're truly like between one day's dismissal bell and the next day's homeroom bell. I'm your host, Trish, and I'm happy to say welcome to this week's episode. I'm so excited to announce that Father Robbins is here on the podcast with us this week. As the Director of Catholic Identity at Camden Catholic, Father Robbins is the priestly presence in our school community, almost like the parish priest of our school. The most important thing he does is organize the sacramental life of our school, celebrating school masses, and hearing confessions. He also co-teaches the campus ministry class, works alongside Mrs. LaRosa in all of our campus ministry functions, helps organize and leads our school retreats, provides different prayer opportunities, and frequently meets with students and faculty to help them grow in their relationship with Christ. He says that he tries to be involved in as many aspects of our school's life as possible to continuously help inspire the members of our community to take their faith seriously. Father Robbins has already made a great impression within the school building, but what about out of the school building? What about Between Bells? And now we have Father Robbins here on the podcast. We are officially now recording. So, hello, Father Robbins. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Trish. How are you?
Honestly, I just got out of an AP exam. It was AP Lang. It wasn't too bad, but everyone knows AP exams are kind of exhausting.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I get to, wind down by talking to you and recording your episode. I was very excited about this episode, actually.
Man.
We'll get to that. Because first we have to do what we normally do on the podcast. Could you please give me your full name, first and last, your room location, and how long you've been here at CCHS?
All right. My name is Father Stephen George Robbins. My middle name is George. Most people don't know that. I am located oftentimes with Mrs. LaRosa in room 218 on Senior Hallway. And then my office is right next to the campus ministry office in that little hallway between junior and senior hallways.
Like the little nebulous hallway that no one really knows. Is it junior hallway? Is it senior hallway?
Yeah. I just tell people near the labs.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's how I remember where the labs are. It's like, oh, it's the one with the labs. Yeah. How long have you been here at Camden Catholic?
I'm about to come to the end of my first year here at Camden Catholic.
Very first year. And we're going to get into that. But, of course, you can't avoid this week's wild card. And I'm going to ask you for your week's wild card. What's your favorite snack?
Ooh, man, my favorite snack. So I would say probably my favorite snack, I don't know if you've ever had them, those little like peanut butter filled pretzel nugget things.
Ooh, those are good.
Amazing.
Those are good
Definitely my
ones.
favorite snack.
That's a very valid answer. I like those a lot. Okay, nice. All right, so I have the first question here down as, how are you liking it here at Camden Catholic? Because, again, it is Father Robbins' first ever year here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Camden Catholic has been awesome. I just, the only thing that's been hard for me has been like not having as much time as I would like to have because, we only have so much time in each day, and I am part-time here, and then I'm part-time serving in my parish in Camden. But during my time here, I've loved it. This is my first year as a priest. Just having a lot of fun, getting to know all of you guys, getting to hang out with you, get to know each and every one of the students, and being able to help, try to bring people deeper in their faith when they're at this really cool period of their life. Like you guys are, in high school, like making decisions now, trying to figure out like, who is God calling me to be? Like, what does the future hold? And that's a really privileged place to be able to minister. So I'm really, really grateful for that.
That sounds so great because that actually ties into a lot of things I want to talk to you about. I mean, I didn't know this was also your first year as a priest, though.
It is, yeah. I was just ordained. I'm actually, as we record this episode, coming up, my anniversary will be May 14th.
Exciting.
Yeah.
I guess another question I had down that I wanted to ask you was, did you always intend to help out with a high school when you became a priest? Or did they just hit you with it this year?
It's really interesting. So before I entered the seminary, right? So before I had even made this decision that I thought God was calling me to become a priest, what I thought I wanted to do was be a high school teacher. Like I really wanted to teach history. It was like kind of like one of the things I was really passionate about. So I'd never said anything about this, like in the seminary or anything. Obviously people who know me knew like I'm interested in that. But they ended up sending me here kind of without really necessarily knowing that. I think. So I'm super grateful
okay.
for the way it's worked out. God has been very good to me.
Yeah, God has a plan. When did you first have the notion you want to pursue being a priest? I guess I can word it.
Yeah, this is a really good question. And how much time do we have? Given our limitations in time and whatnot now, the idea first popped into my head when I was in high school, probably when I was about your age. I first seriously considered it when I was a senior in high school.
Okay.
That's when I really weighed okay, is this something really that I want to do, that God's calling me to do? But I was kind of afraid of it. I thought I don't know about this. So I kind of tried to keep punting it down the road. And so when I finally decided, okay, this is what I want to do, was during my freshman year of college. So I was 18 going on 19 was when I finally decided, okay, I think God's calling me to do this. And now 8 or 9 years later, here we are. So.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that now that you are a priest and now that you are in a high school, helping out with the high school, you mentioned that you have a little less free time. That was something I wanted to cover. I was like, let me try to recall. There was one homily you did where you mentioned Wednesday on Netflix. And it was also one of your first homilies this year, I feel like. It was really early on. And then, of course, you're a bit younger in age compared to, our previous priest, Father Joe, God bless his soul. But I was really interested in asking you, when do you have the time to watch these things? And you're also in book society. So how do you find the time to read the books we read and stuff?
It is interesting. It's one of those things where you'll find, and a lot of us, I think, already kind of find this in high school, the busier you are and the less free time you have, the more you realize that your free time counts. And if all of us are really honest with ourselves, and we aren't often, there's a lot of time during our day that we waste. Whether it be just kind of mindlessly scrolling through social media,
of course.
or just kind of when you get into the YouTube vortex, which we all
I'm so guilty
are
of
very
that.
susceptible to. Yeah. So I've had to really try to prioritize what's important to me, and so when I have this little bits of free time, before I go to bed or kind of in between appointments or something, what do I want to fill that time with? And so to be honest, I really don't watch that many shows, but my pastor and I, and thanks be to God, my pastor, Father Adam, is also a very young priest. So we also kind of share a lot of similar interests, but oftentimes at the very end of the day. So when everything is kind of concluded, all of our meetings, appointments, groups, whatever, we'll usually try to watch something really short, even if it's just for a half hour, a little segment of something. And then reading, I try to always have a couple books going at the same time in different genres. But in terms of talking about book society, fiction reading, novels, I always try to read a couple of pages before I go to bed. And then on a day off, which I get one day off every week, for me that's on Saturdays, I try to set aside some time to really dig into that because it's what I like and what feeds me and nourishes me. So
yeah, and that takes a lot of, what do you call it? Temperance, self-control.
which I'm very far from perfecting.
Yeah,
but we're getting there little by little.
But that's something that, God helps us with and all. And speaking of God, I mean, it's kind of hard to do that transition because I'm talking to a priest. But you also help co-teach the campus ministry class with Miss La Rosa,
yes.
right? So what is that like? Because I don't think I've really seen a class where it's quote-unquote co-taught.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and we're still kind of figuring it out too.
Okay.
But the unique nature of that class kind of lends itself to being a little bit more, or a little bit less of a traditional structure, because so much of what we do in that class is a lot of hands-on work, planning and organizing our retreats for all the students.
Of course.
And then when we do teach normal content, which we also do in that class, right, going through the same curriculum as all of our seniors, just kind of taking turns on a particular lesson of who of us has a little bit maybe more to offer in this particular field. Or when we plan ahead, kind of sharing different parts of the lesson, on the different things that maybe I know a little bit more about as a priest, that Mrs. La Rosa knows a little bit more about in her experience, and we make it work. And thankfully we have a really good relationship, the two of us, so we're able to be okay, what are we doing?
Yeah,
how are we going to do this?
Your offices are literally connected. I would hope that you guys have a good relationship.
We do. I'm very grateful to be able to serve with Mrs. La Rosa. She's amazing, and without her, I would have been very lost here, especially
That's
in my
true,
making
yeah.
this transition. So she's been awesome.
So are you both talking? Are you always in the classroom together during that class, or is it sometimes one or the other, or?
Yeah, sometimes it's one or the other. Most often it's the two of us. But
Okay.
if there's only going to be one of us, it's almost always her. Because the reason
yeah.
I'm not there is usually because of my schedule.
That's true.
Yeah.
Could you go up into your schedule? Because when we were trying to schedule this episode, it was a little thing we had to work around. But I found it kind of interesting because I didn't know that. I don't know. I guess it's just something you don't really think about. I mean, I went to Catholic school since like kindergarten all the way 8th grade. And we had a priest that would always visit us. But I don't think he was stationary at our school, though. So it was something new to me finding out that you have to balance that sort of schedule.
Yeah. So it's unique because obviously, like, our high school, like, is for the whole diocese, right? So we have people coming from all over the place. But for me, so I'm technically part-time, both here in the school and in my parish, which is the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception in downtown Camden. So if you've ever been to Cooper Hospital
Yes.
or to Rutgers Camden, I'm, like, literally right there. That's where we are. And it's kind of interesting, too. That's where the original Camden Catholic was on our campus at the cathedral.
Yeah.
So it's fun. I'm like in the old Camden Catholic and the new Camden Catholic. But so the way my schedule usually works is I basically split 50-50 how much time I spend in both places. So usually the way my weekly schedule would work is that on Monday, I spend the whole day in the parish because that's my pastor's day off. So I usually kind of hold down the fort at the church, celebrating the daily mass, doing communion calls, having appointments like for wedding prep, funerals, etc. Then Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm here all day. So I, being involved in the life of the school, whatever things are kind of going on. And then Thursday and Friday, I'm here in the morning and then in the parish in the afternoon. So I do like a half and half. Now, obviously, all of that's subject to change based on what's going on. There are times like, for example, if we have a Kairos retreat here at school, like I'm going to be here all the time during those 3 days.
The whole time, yep.
But then on the other hand, like Holy Week in the parish, even though we have school, I'm basically in the parish the whole week.
Understandable.
So it kind of just depends what's going on.
Yeah. This is a completely spontaneous question. Because, I mean, usually when I make these episodes, I, like, write down a couple questions I want to ask. But since you mentioned weddings and funerals, this is a genuine question just for, like, that I've always wanted to ask.
Yeah.
How frequent are those? Because I guess you don't, of course, it's not mass. You don't go and see it. Like, how frequently are you doing weddings and funerals as a priest?
So this is one that's hugely variable. Like, it all just kind of is kind of random, because you just don't know. So, for example, between now and the end of this year, so the end of 2023, I have 7 weddings coming up. So there's a lot. So you figure that averages to be almost like one every month.
Yeah.
That's an exceptionally large number. And part of that's because being a young priest, a lot of like my friends from high school are all like getting engaged now, and they
that's crazy.
Yeah, so I'm doing a couple. I've already done one wedding of 2 friends from high school, and I have a couple more coming up. So those, you figure you'll probably have a few of them a year. Not too many, but the thing with weddings is there's a lot of prep work that goes into that.
True.
So like you're meeting with the couple several times to kind of get them ready for that big day.
That's true, isn't it? Yeah, that's true.
Now, funerals, on the other hand, it's one of those things where like when it rains, it pours. Kind of
really?
Like I've had in my first year times where I'll go like a whole month where there won't be a funeral. And then I'll go into a period like right now where we've had 5, like in the last 3 weeks.
Last 3 weeks?
Yeah, so I actually just had a funeral yesterday. Like, they happen very frequently.
How do you deal with doing that? Because, like, funerals are a pretty emotionally charged thing. Same with weddings.
Yeah.
Is that, like, hard to balance emotionally as a priest, or do they kind of prep you for that?
Yeah, I mean, you can only be prepared so much,
of course,
other than by, like, just doing it. So at this point in my life, I've only been a priest for a little bit. But even as a kid, I remember, because I went to Catholic grade school, I would get pulled out of class a lot to go and serve funerals, like at the church.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing.
So I grew up, like, going to funerals a lot. And I remember the first couple of times being, like, upset, like, crying, like, with these families.
I would do that, too.
And I do think there's a certain natural desensitization that takes place. I don't want to sound so, like, cold about it.
No,
because it's not that you're being cold, but, when you experience it that frequently, like, you have to kind of build up a tolerance to be able to, like, okay, this family is really emotional. They're really going through a tough time. I have to kind of be stable for them here, to bring this kind of calming presence of the Lord. So it really just depends on the funeral. Like I did one yesterday for an older gentleman who died at 93. And there's just a whole different tenor to a funeral like that than, for example, one of my funerals I had to do was for a 10-year-old girl who like really tragically died. So like those are really hard.
Yeah.
But so, it really depends. But it obviously it all has to be kind of rooted in prayer.
Of course,
and like,
of course. I would hope so, yeah.
Do I really believe what I'm preaching here? Because if I do, then I don't despair and and fall into like hopelessness of experiencing death all the time. But a lot of that's just about having an active relationship with Christ, which is the only way I can do it.
Yeah. Short between bells break. According to Joshua Harrison Photography Company, did you know that in addition to the weddings that Father Robbins has to oversee, there are 2.3 million couples wed every year in the United States? That breaks down to about 6,200 weddings per day. I'm going to exclude any statistics on how many funerals happen every day because I don't want to bring the vibes down. But anyway, now back to the show. All right. Okay, let's move on to something a bit more fun than talking about
let's
funerals.
do it.
I don't know if you know, but we have segments on my podcast.
Yes.
So my segment for you, I've named it A Parade of Saints. So basically it's a guessing game. I'm going to give you a description and they have to guess the saint.
Ooh, this could be tough. All right, let's do it.
I'm going to be honest, a little spoiler, the very last one I think is one of the hardest.
All right.
Because I've never heard of, anyway, hold on. I don't want to, let's just get to it.
All right, let's do it.
So the first one I would say is relatively easy. It's the patron saint of animals.
I would say Saint Francis of Assisi.
Correct. All right, so moving on to 2. This one's also kind of a bit of a easy one. It's the patron saint of lost things.
Saint Anthony of Padua.
Yes.
Which, if I'm honest, I still don't really know why.
That's something I might look into after we record this episode, maybe as for one of my in-between pill breaks. But yeah, they always tell you should pray to him if you lose something. And I'm someone who loses stuff all the time.
You and me both.
So yeah, I've prayed to him a couple times. So number 3 is the patron saint of diseases relating to the throat.
Saint Blaise.
Oh, so you knew that one, yeah.
Yes, we always do on his feast day a special blessing of throats.
Yeah, have you ever done the thing where you use the candles?
I did. So this being my first year, it was the first time I did it.
Ooh, okay.
So I did it at my parish. I forget, like there was some reason, I think his feast day like happened to fall on a day I wasn't here or something. So we didn't do it here at school, but I did do it in my parish for sure. Yeah,
because the story is there was something caught in some kid's throat. Was it like a fishbone or something is what I remember. And that one kind of hits home because I'm Filipino and we eat a lot of fish, or at least where my parents come from in the Philippines. Like they come from like a village that's literally right next to the shore. And so I eat a lot of fish, and ever since I was younger, I had to learn how to avoid the fish bones because we just, when we prepare fish, we just get the fish from the market and then cook it. But you have to learn how to, not swallow the bones.
Right, yeah, which is not easy always because sometimes they're super tiny.
Exactly. So that's always been a big fear of mine. And so when I found out there was a patron saint for that, I was like, okay, nice. I know who to pray to.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 4 is the patron saint of soldiers. Yeah, this one might be a bit hard because I feel like there might be multiple for it, but I have a specific one in mind. If you want a hint, I'll give it to you.
All right, yeah, give me the hint because I'm thinking of a couple people right now.
France. That's your hint, France.
Is it Saint Martin of Tours?
No, it was Saint Joan of Arc.
Joan of Arc, of course. Okay, yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of on my part. I'm now realizing there's probably a couple patron saints of like soldiers or war or whatever, but it's all right. I'll give you a half point for that. I feel like that's a bit on me. So number 5, this one might not be as well known. I have a little story of why I put this one on though. It's the patron saint of music.
Saint Cecilia.
You know that one.
Yes.
I'm so happy you know that one. Do you want to know why I put it on there?
Sure, yeah, why?
So in, what was it? Either 7th or 8th grade, we started researching saints we wanted to have as our confirmation saint.
Yes.
So initially I did a report on Saint Cecilia because I've been playing piano since I was like 4. So I was like, why not do patron saint of music? So I learned a lot about her, but it ended up I didn't pick her as my confirmation saint. The saint I actually picked was Saint Aloysius. That's because at Our Lady of Hope we have this one project for the middle schoolers where it's in 7th grade, I know that for sure, where it spans a bunch of different subjects. It's religion, writing and composition and history. So the religion aspect is, of course, we had to do research on saints. The literature aspect was we had to write an argumentative essay. And the history one is we had to do like a live debate on stage. So the prompt that year was we had to pick a saint and argue. Well, actually, we got assigned the saint, I think, and then had to argue why they'd be a good candidate to put on some hypothetical worldwide currency. So I got assigned Saint Aloysius, and I ended up winning the debate. And I won it by, because get put in a group with about 2 or 3 other people, and you use their saints in your essay. But for the actual thing, it's like a bracket system.
Right.
And so I passed through my group. I went on, and then I had to go against my good friend Noelle Donegan. She goes to PVI now. I don't know if she'll ever listen to this, but well, if you're listening, I'm sorry, because we were the last 2 on stage. And the way I won was she argued something that her saint was a really good, like, well-known pope for what he did. And I said something along the lines of, it doesn't matter if you have a title or not, it matters the impact you make on others. Because that's the whole thing with St. Aloysius. Right. He's the patron saint of youth. And so from that point on, when I won, I kind of realized that if I said that, I should really mean it. And then I decided he would be my confirmation saint to help guide me and stuff. So since I picked him and not Saint Cecilia, I kind of wanted to add her in there. Yeah. It's a bit of an oddball saint, this patron saint of music, but that's my little ode to her.
That's awesome. Very fitting word there, ode.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny. Yeah. Thanks to Saint Cecilia. Love her a lot. Sorry I couldn't make you my confirmation saint. But I'm glad that you got her, because I still think she's a great saint.
Yeah, she's awesome. And a lot of times if you look in, especially in like older churches, in like the areas where like the musicians are, they'll often have like a stained glass window of Saint Cecilia to kind of like inspire us while we're singing and playing. Like, oh man, Saint Cecilia's with us. Like, help us praise the Lord.
Yep. Love Saint Cecilia. Okay, so now this is the last one. As I said, I hinted to earlier, I think this one might be the hardest. But if you get it, I'll be very surprised. So, which saint should you pray to in order to ward off seasickness?
Ooh.
It's a very niche one, but I wanted to make it the
I'm
last
going to
one.
like take a shot in the dark. Is it Saint Raymond of Peñafort?
No, it's Saint Erasmus.
Okay, I don't even know who that is.
Yeah, I've never heard of him before, so that's why I made it the last one, because I try to make the last one the hardest, easiest to hardest.
Of
but
course.
You still got, wait, hold on. I'm not that good at math. Wait, 1, 2, 3.5, 4. You got 4.5 out of 6.
All right, I'll take it.
That's pretty good. That's more than half correct. Short between bells break. I got curious, and so upon further research, I have some interesting information for us to learn about Saint Erasmus, aka Saint Elmo. That's right, like the Sesame Street character. Who would have thought that Elmo would have come up not once, but twice in a short between bells break this season? Anyway, on to Saint Erasmus. I have 2 old legends here taken from Catholic Online that can help us understand why St. Erasmus is the patron saint of seasickness, or I guess the ocean in general. Just a fair warning, the second one is a bit more graphic than the others, so if you're a bit squirmish about that, just keep that in mind after I tell the first story. The first one is, legend records that when a blue light appears at mastheads before and after a storm, the seamen took it as a sign of Erasmus' protection. This is known as St. Elmo's fire. The blue electrical discharges under certain atmospheric conditions have also been seen on the masts or riggings of ships. So the second one is the bit more graphic one, so please skip about like 30 seconds forward if you think that'll make you squeamish. But St. Erasmus is also invoked against stomach cramps and colic. This came about because at one time he had hot iron hooks stuck into his intestines by persecutors under Emperor Diocletian. These wounds he miraculously endured. So now we all know a little bit more about St. Erasmus, and if you ever find yourself on a podcast where the segment is naming different saints, you'll know exactly what you're talking about. Now back to the show. All right, so that was fun. I would say to close off your episode, I guess I would just want to ask you, what are some of your hopes for hopefully the coming years that you'll stay with Camden Catholic as our new priest here?
Yeah, I think very simply because like the first year has been awesome. I feel like so much of this first year has been just like getting to know people, getting to know.
Yeah, real quick, that's another thing I want to mention. I think it's crazy in a good way.
Yeah.
How when you first came to school here, you like knew almost everyone's names already.
Well,
This is what it felt like, because sometimes
Yeah.
I'd be walking with my friends and you would say hi to us, and you said hi to me and mentioned me by name when I've never talked to you before. How did that happen, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't
real
really,
quick?
there was no system. I didn't like go
Sit
on
down.
RenWeb and like memorize people's names based on their photos. Although maybe that would have been a good idea. No, it's just like, because I know for myself, like being in an unfamiliar place and meeting unfamiliar people, sometimes when people know your name, like it makes you feel like affirmed or like I matter because this person took the time to like learn what my name was.
Yeah.
So I try my best and I fail at it a lot because there's still so many kids here whose names I don't know.
That's fair. There's a lot of kids. There's a lot of
But
kids.
I consider it of like very great importance to know people's names. And because it shows them like you matter and I care about you. So
Short between bells break. Have you ever wondered how many names the human brain is capable of remembering? I was also wondering the same thing after my conversation with Father Robbins, but upon further research, I found out it was really hard to find a solid number of how many names the human brain can remember. Due to either not sufficient research or unreliable sources, the number 150 was thrown around, but I ended up finding something that was much more interesting. It's something called our facial vocabulary. Facial vocabulary is a term referring to how many faces we can recognize. According to a study written about by the Smithsonian Magazine, the researchers found that participants were able to remember between 1,000 and 10,000 faces with an average of 5,000. This is because, as many studies have found, that the human brain is better at recognizing faces rather than recalling names. So, if you come across someone you recognize but just can't seem to recall their name, don't worry. That's normal. Your brain is working exactly how it's supposed to be. Now back to the show.
and then that's kind of like where my ministry begins then.
Yeah, that's very true.
And so like to answer your question about hopes and dreams, the first year it's been great, like experiencing everything one time, getting to know people, getting to know like their stories and like where they're from and what they're dealing with and what their hopes and their dreams and their fears and their worries are. My hope going forward for however much time that may be, because in my job I never know
Yeah,
kind of how long I'm going to be in any given place, but to just now like going from that, like earning people's trust, showing them that I care about them, getting to know who they are and what matters to them. How can I now help lead you to know God better? That's why I'm here. I'm not just here to like hang out and go to baseball games and basketball games and like be on podcasts, and that's all great stuff.
You were at homecoming. I saw a picture.
Go
of
to
that.
homecoming, right? Like stuff like that. But all of that is so I can know you guys and what matters to you, what matters to me. And now how can I meet you guys where you are and take those next steps, like to get to know the Lord better. And then hopefully, God willing, because obviously you can only do so much in this year window, right?
Yeah.
But to plant seeds that hopefully when you guys go off to college and when you grow up, then you have a foundation to build off of, or you remember something that happened at Camden Catholic when I'm going through a difficult period in my life that'll hopefully make me take my faith a little bit more seriously. That's what it's all about.
That's so wonderful. And I wish you the best of luck, and hopefully you see all those things come to fruition. I'll say, and probably I would dare to say most of the school would agree, you've been a great addition to the community. I'm so glad I got to interview you for my podcast, especially since it's the first year I'm doing it. You were a great guest to have. Thank you so much for joining
Thanks, Trish.
me.
No, this was awesome. Anytime. Had a lot of fun, and God bless you in your mission. Interviewing all these faculty. This is awesome.
Thank you. If you found something in common with him or just want to say hi, Stephen Robbins is located in his office, which is between Senior and Junior Hall. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Between Bells and that we might catch you next time. But for now, this has been your host, Trish, and from wherever you're listening in, I hope you have a great morning, afternoon, or night. Bye!